Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. We're studying from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, entitled Answers by Citing the Lord's Version. We're on text 44. Text 44 of Chapter 9, Canto 2. Today's August 7th, 2021. Narayanam Namaskricha Naram Chaivanrotamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tatojayam Udiraya. Before reciting the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayasha Bhagavata Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavat Yutamashloki, Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So text 44. Tasmai Idam Bhagavatam Puranam Dashalakshanam Proktam Bhagavata Praha Prita Putraya Utakrit Tasma idam Bhagavatam Puranam Dashalakshanam Proktam Bhagavata Praha Prita Putraya Bhutakrit Tasma idam Bhagavatam Puranam Dashalakshanam Proktam Bhagavata Praha Prita Putraya Bhutakrit Tasmaidam Bhagavatam Puranam Dashalakshanam Proktam Bhagavata Praha Prita Putraya Bhutakrit Tasma idam Bhagavatam Puranam Dashalakshanam Proktam Bhagavata Praha Prita Putraya Bhutakrit
Tasma idam Bhagavatam
Puranam Dashalakshanam Proktam Bhagavata Praha Prita Putraya Bhutakrit. Would anyone online like to chant?
Tashmaidam Bhagavatam
Tasmaidam Bhagavatam
Puranam Dashalakshanam Proktam Bhagavata Praha
Proktam Bhagavata Praha
Prita Putraya Bhutakrit
Prita Putraya Bhutakrit
Tasmaidam Bhagavatam Puranam Dashalakshanam Proktam Bhagavata Praha Prita Putraya Bhutakrit
Prita Putraya Bhuta Krit. Okay, we'll go to the word for word. Tasmai,
Tasmai,
thereupon,
thereupon,
idam,
idam,
this,
this,
Bhagavatam,
Bhagavatam,
the glories of the Lord,
the glories of the Lord,
or the science of the Lord,
or the science of the Lord,
Puranam,
Puranam,
Vedic supplement,
Vedic supplement,
Dasha Lakshanam,
Ashalakshanam,
10 characteristics,
and characteristics,
Proktam,
Proktam,
described,
described,
Bhagavata,
Bhagavata,
by the personality of Godhead,
by the personality of Godhead,
Praha,
Praha,
said,
said,
Prita,
Rita,
in satisfaction,
in satisfaction,
Putraya,
Putraya,
unto the Son,
unto the Son,
Buddhakrit,
Buddha,
the creator of the universe.
the creator of the universe.
Translation. Thereupon the supplementary Vedic literature, Srimad-Bhagavatam, which was described by the personality of Godhead and which contains 10 characteristics, was told with satisfaction by the Father Brahma to his son Narada. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Although the Srimad-Bhagavatam was spoken in 4 verses, it had 10 characteristics, which will be explained in the next chapter. In the 4 verses, it is first said that the Lord existed before the creation, and thus the beginning of the Srimad-Bhagavatam includes the Vedanta aphorism Janmadhyasya. Janmadhyasya is the beginning, yet the 4 verses in which it is said that the Lord is the root of everything that be, beginning from the creation up to the supreme abode of the Lord, naturally explain the 10 characteristics. One should not misunderstand by wrong interpretations that the Lord spoke only 4 verses and that therefore all the rest of the 17,994 verses are useless. The 10 characteristics, as will be explained in the next chapter, require so many verses just to explain them properly. Brahmaji had also advised Narada previously that he should expand the idea he had heard from Brahmaji. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed this to Srila Rupa Goswami in a nutshell, but the disciple Rupa Goswami expanded this very elaborately, and the same subject was further expanded by Jiva Goswami and even further by Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. We are just trying to follow in the footsteps of all these authorities. So Srimad-Bhagavatam is not like ordinary fiction or mundane literature. It is unlimited in strength, and however one may expand it according to one's own ability, Bhagavatam still cannot be finished by such expansion. Srimad-Bhagavatam, being the sound representation of the Lord, is simultaneously explained in 4 verses and in 4 billion verses, all the same. Inasmuch as the Lord is smaller than the atom and bigger than the unlimited sky, such is the potency of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gura Shri Uttaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatayubhyascha kripa sindubhyeva cha patitanan pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Srimad-Bhagavatam Canto 2 Chapter 9 Text 44. Tasmahidam Bhagavatam Purnam Dashalakshanam Proktam Bhagavata Praha Krita Putraya Bhutakrit. Thereupon the supplementary Vedic literature, Srimad-Bhagavatam, which was described by the personality of Godhead and which contains 10 characteristics, was told with satisfaction by the father Brahma to his son Narada. So I'm here with Damayanti, Ladini Shakti, Payal, and Parampara. Here online, there's Malini, Lakshmi Priya, Rukmini, Kelly, Kim, Gajendra, and Anandini. We're studying Srimad-Bhagavatam. There's some very interesting, fascinating numerology going on here, just from my point of view. It just so happens, so we have a Bhagavad Gita course going, some of you are part of that. And in the Bhagavad Gita course, we're in chapter 10, which is entitled The Opulence of the Absolute. Okay, and so this verse, we're right towards the end of chapter 9 of Bhagavatam, second canto. And this verse really introduces the 10th chapter of the second canto. And the 10th chapter of the second canto describes really the 10 subjects of Srimad-Bhagavatam. So somehow we got 10 going on all over the place here. And see, the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, so I expect that some of what I'll say now, I'll say later today for those of you who are in the Bhagavad Gita course. Because so there's the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it's so much about this verse too. So like this verse in a sense summarizes the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So there's 10 characteristics of Srimad-Bhagavatam, subjects, themes. And the 10th, what's called the Ashraya, the shelter of all of them. That's Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Oh my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, all-pervading personality of Godhead, offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth. So the foundation and the foundation, source, and shelter of all of the energies of creation and processes for liberation and maintenance of the status quo, all the energies, the shelter is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And so I'm going to reference the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Well, there's so much there, but basically, Krishna describes to Arjuna so many of his manifestations and energies. That's a chapter where he says, amongst aquatics, I am the shark. I am the strength of the strong. Amongst immovable things, I am the Himalayan mountains. Well, I was reading a response from Anandini. We might say, Krishna is the Alps. In her response, she took shelter of the Alpine mountains there. So I'm sure Krishna would be fine with the Alps there. And so Krishna gives dozens and dozens of his manifestations. Okay. And before that, see, in the 10th chapter, just like in this chapter, there's the seed verses of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, 4 seed verses. And so Prabhupada says, so the other 17,999 for 99 for verses are useless. No, because there's unlimited expansion. And Prabhupada citing some of the prominent commentators on Bhagavatam. Well, Lord Chaitanya, Srila Rupa. Actually, Lord Chaitanya did not write commentary. He only wrote 8 verses that we know of. Rupa Goswami, great guy, Jiva Goswami, the Sat Sandarbhas. This is epic philosophical work. It's all a commentary on the Bhagavatam. Tattva Sandarbha, Bhagavat Sandarbha, Paramatma Sandarbha, Krishna Sandarbha, Bhakti Sandarbha, Priti Sandarbha, Krama Sundarba.
What's Sandarbha?
What's that?
What's Sandarbha?
Sandarbha. Okay, my understanding is like Sandarbha is like, what's the word in English actually? That like if you have, okay, like here, what's this called? Hang in here. I mean, I know it's a picture of Krishna, but tapestry, a tapestry. Sandarbha is a tapestry. Okay, so just like in a tapestry, you have so many threads woven together, horizontal and vertical. Okay, so a Sandarbha weaves together all the philosophical themes. Okay, so that's actually the meaning of Sandarbha. So it's like it's a philosophical treatise that weaves together everything.
When you were listing all these different Sandarbhas, how many are there?
Well,
It's not 10.
okay, so, okay, one of the commentators that Prabhupada mentions in this purport is Srila Jiva Goswami. Srila Jiva Goswami was a prolific writer, philosopher, saint, pure devotee, who was one of the Goswamis. And his most, you might say, his most famous work, or at least the work of his that Prabhupada quotes the most, is called the Sat Sandarbhas. Sat means 6. Okay. So it's the name of a work. Okay. And so there are other great Vaishnava writers who also write different types of Sandarbhas. But when we say the Sandarbhas, Prabhupada's referring to Srila Jiva Goswami's 6 Sandarbhas. Okay. And actually there are 7. Because what he'll have is, so like he'll have the 7th Sandarbha is called the Krama Sundarba, which is kind of like just a sequential, not just, a sequential commentary on the Bhagavatam from the first verse of the first chapter through the 12th canto, just like Prabhupada is sequentially giving us Bhagavatam. His other Sandarbhas, like he'll have Paramatma Sundarba. So there, he's taking from all parts of the Bhagavatam to illustrate the identity and qualities and characteristics of Supersoul. Then he'll have Krishna Sundarba. He's taking from all the Bhagavatam different quotes and commenting on them to indicate the place of Krishna. He'll take Bhakti Sundarba. So he'll take from all cantos 1 through 12, so many quotes and sections to illustrate the primacy of bhakti. So Sandarbha, thanks for giving me the English word, I forgot. It's a tapestry. Sandarbha is a
He
tapestry.
didn't have database.
He didn't have database.
You just type in the word bhakti and then get it all.
I don't know if you heard Damayanti, but yeah, so that's a good point. Right. He didn't have database. What's that?
He was the database.
Yeah, he didn't have database. He had something called memory. Memory. Ooh. Right. Yes. Right. No, but no, it's a good point you made, because because we can think of like Brahma, you know, he has the 4 heads, and he's like, his brain is so much, he's managing the whole universe so much beyond what we can conceive. But we don't need, like, even to someone like Jiva Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, they're not like a little smarter than us. I mean, what to speak of their devotion? Like, you know, they've got brains beyond what we can conceive. So it's a good point that he didn't have data.
Like, I'm so often thinking that Prabhupada didn't have like Google,
Right.
like,
Yes.
compile all these things.
Yes.
Like,
Prabhupada too. Yeah.
All that.
Yeah.
All of everything he said in the purports.
Yes.
and like quoting devices.
So Prabhupada quotes Jiva Goswami. Then following Jiva Goswami, there's another commentator, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And Prabhupada said he expanded even further. So 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives, here's so many ways in nature, in the universe, that you can know me. And then at the end of the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yaya vibhutimat sattvam shriman urjitam evava tatadeva vagachatam ekam shenastito jagat. But Krishna says, know that all these beautiful, mighty, and glorious creations, they spring from but a spark of my splendor. And Krishna goes on, Atava bahunaitena kim getena tavarjuna vistabhyami dam kritsnam mamatesham sha sambhava. And Krishna says, but what need is there, O Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge with but a single fragment of myself? That's the super soul. The single fragment of myself, that's the Krishna's referring to the super soul. With about a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. So the idea, both with the 10th chapter and the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita and the 10th chapter of Bhagavatam, which is introduced here at the end of the 9th chapter, the idea is we study the different energies and categories and manifestations. And the purpose of that is to come to Krishna. Krishna says in one of the seed verses of Bhagavad Gita, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matar sarvam pravartate itimatva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. He says, I'm the source of all spiritual and material energies. And the wise people who get that, they naturally get my greatness, they naturally serve me with devotion. And then Krishna says that through studying the energies and all the analysis, you come to devotion to Krishna. And Krishna says, and when someone's actually at that point, then they don't need to study all the energies. I mean, they might do it just because it's fun, but they don't need to. That's like we hear, like, say, the gopis or the cowherd boys, like they're not doing a minute analysis of the Bhagavatam. I mean, because they're realizing the conclusion of the Bhagavatam. So just very interesting numerology for me, that this is introducing the 10 characteristics of the 10th chapter of the second canto, and it completely parallels the main theme or a main theme of the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita.
Did you say the rest again? Because I'm not like seeing this point that you have.
Well, okay. Thereupon, the supplementary Vedic literature Srimad-Bhagavatam, which was described by the personality of Godhead and which contains 10 characteristics, was told with satisfaction by the father Brahma to his son Narada. So in the days to come, weeks to come, maybe months to come, sometimes we go at slower paces, we're going to hear a lot about these 10 characteristics as we get into the 10th chapter. We're going to hear a lot about them. This verse begins to introduce them. Well, basically, they are the titles that Prabhupada gave the cantos. Okay, so the Maha Meta creation, then the creation of the material elements. Canto 3, status quo, maintenance of the universe. Canto 7, the science of God, liberation. It's basically the titles that Prabhupada gives the cantos. That's the 10 characteristics. Canto 10, the summum bonum, Sri Krishna. That's the shelter and the source of all the other categories.
So as lifetimes go on, we will get to a good morning reading.
Yes, and thus it is encouraged to also do our personal reading, which I know you're
You
doing.
can't miss a single class, it sounds like. You
Wait,
shouldn't miss a single class.
well, at least not for the next 50 years.
Okay, all right.
So now in the purport, Prabhupada, he mentions the 10 characteristics, and he's focusing on the authority principle. The authority principle that he says, we are just trying to follow in the footsteps of all these authorities, and we try. It's a good place for the word try. Okay, it's a good place for the word try. There's a place for the word try, like that, because it's like in a humble Prabhupada's humble and empowered when he says he's just trying to follow. And so we try to follow in the footsteps of all these authorities. So we try to follow in the footsteps of Prabhupada, and then we expand Bhagavatam. We expand Bhagavatam. You sent us a video of your son singing Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. That was so cute. Yeah, wonderful, so inspiring. I feel like I got to know your son. Like, so you're in the line. You're in the line of Jiva Goswami, of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, and you're sharing Bhagavatam. You're sharing Bhagavatam with Zion. So that's really what Prabhupada's talking about here. So let us just humbly, enthusiastically try to follow Prabhupada. He's our current link to the Parampara, and we know Prabhupada's perfectly following Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and to share, just like the common saying about love, right? The more you give away, the more you have. Or something, if it's material love, then it's just like, well, I give so much to you and I'm resentful now, so that's material. But the actual spiritual love. So spiritual knowledge, we give it away, and then just like, okay, look, I have the fortune right now. I'm speaking on Bhagavatam, so I'm getting more realization of Bhagavatam as I'm sharing about it. So that's my great fortune. That's my great fortune. And so who should share? So Prabhupada often quotes a verse by Lord Chaitanya, Kiba Vipra Kibinyasi Sujakini Say Krishna Tattvaveda. Yei Krishna Tattvaveda, say Guru Haya. He goes, whoever you are, that even if you were not born in a Brahmin Vaishnava family, some of us may not have been born in a Brahmin Vaishnava family. Yes, whoever you are, that whatever your position in society, whatever your birth, just learn the science of Krishna. Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham, and share it. And that's what it means to be a true teacher rather than a cheater. That's the English words that are related. A teacher rather than a cheater. Teacher means that we actually are hearing from authorities. And it's important because, especially in the name of self-realization, spiritual life, there's a lot of bogus swamis, gurus. There's just a lot of bogus stuff going on. We don't like to point out the negative, but we do want to protect ourselves and others. So we're fortunate to have authoritative knowledge, just like in any science or any field of knowledge. If we really want to know it, we really want to learn it, then it's important that we find someone who's a real master, someone who's not just bluffing and fluffing and things like that. So, and this is 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. One of the things Krishna, like he says, amongst beasts I am lion, and like that. Amongst Pandavas I am Arjuna. Like he's the greatest of any example. So he says, amongst sciences I am the supreme science of the self. So this is very key, because, okay, as part of our life, we learn so many things and fields of endeavor and like that. But to the science of the self, to know the self and the source of the self, that's what it means that 10th characteristics, that's the Ashraya, that's Sri Krishna, the person of God. He's the substratum of our very existence. He's Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Matasabam Pravartate. So, just like we say in the Safato programs or personal coaching, right? Or the idea is to peel off the layers, peel off the masks. I'm observed in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. There's a purport in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita where Prabhupada says, in the material sphere, everything's inauspicious because the very material mask is inauspicious. Everything's inauspicious. Vaite Bhaja Bhaja Gana Sabho Manudar. Similarly, Lord Chaitanya describes that the idea of good and bad materially, it's all a mistake, right? Because as long as it's keeping us within the illusion that I am this body in the cycle of birth, death, old age, disease, then it's bad. It's not helpful, even if we have a smile and we think we're doing nice things. So to act in a way that really supports ourselves and others, to liberate ourselves from this embarrassing entanglement in the drama of material nature, that's absolutely good. So Prabhupada, I have a side comment. In the edited edition, they take out Prabhupada's mask comment from the 10th chapter. Yeah. So anyhow, so in the original edition, Prabhupada says, because the material mask is inauspicious. So we know, like that, you know, that's what foundational course, advanced course, up to 3 coaching. It's about taking off and getting to more and more genuineness, authenticity. And we know if we don't do that, then we're living a shallow life. And as human beings, we're meant to live a rich life. And as long as we're living out of fear-based masks and facades and not with urgency, then we won't be fulfilled. And we'll feel empty and hollow. And then so much of material life is trying to numb the emptiness. We all have our numbing strategies. We all have our, escape strategies. And so, okay, so that's personal growth principles. And if we take it in its ultimate source, the ultimate source of all genuine, valid personal growth principles is Srimad-Bhagavatam. So if we take it, okay, so we're not the body, we're not the mind. If we really go deep to the core, I am spirit, soul, and we can go deeper than that. And the soul of my soul, the soul of your soul, the soul of all existence, that's the personality of Godhead. And so to cultivate that most deep, intimate relationship, that's this process of bhakti. That's this process of bhakti. So that's a real deep, rich, meaningful life. And if we're not going there, then we're living a relatively superfluous life. And we will not be deeply satisfied. We will be deeply frustrated. We might admit it or not. So this is important philosophically and for our own genuine happiness. Look, another verse from Lord Chaitanya, when Lord Chaitanya was in South India, that Prabhupada quotes a lot. Yare deke tare kaha Krishna upadesh amara agyaya guru anatara edesh. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, wherever you go, whoever you meet, just somehow or other share with them about this science of Krishna, the science of God. Now that can take many forms. It's not a stereotyped form, but somehow or other, in all interactions, create value in the most sublime sense, supporting people to take off masks and connect with the source of their existence and the very foundation of their existence, and to connect with the process that awakens that original eternal relationship. That's the actual bliss of the soul. Everything else, 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita again, everything else is violence. Because it's a waste of time. Shrama eva hi kevalam, but even more severe. It's actually violence. We're wasting each other's time. So that can take many forms, how we do it. At least though, Srila Prabhupada is encouraging us to be in that consciousness that whoever we meet, wherever we go, we're dedicated somehow or other to create value. It can look like a philosophical discussion. It can look like good morning. It can look many forms. So it's not stereotyped in the form. There was a morning walk and there was like a jogger passing by, and Prabhupada said to him, "Good morning," in Los Angeles or somewhere. So a little while later, one of Prabhupada's students said, "Well, why did you say to him, 'Good morning,' not Hare Krishna?" So I don't know that Prabhupada gave an answer. In one sense, it's not a very good question, but well, it's a question that perhaps. So of course, Hare Krishna is transcendental sound vibration, but Prabhupada through Super Soul knew that for this spiritual being having a human experience, jogging, that supporting him in his awakening, in his coming towards Super Soul, good morning is going to do it better than Hare Krishna at that moment. Okay, so we want to follow the principle like that, and okay, so yes, so Prabhupada, so much. This is one of many verses in Bhagavatam that glorifies the Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada's following that in the purport, citing principal pillar commentators of the Bhagavatam. And it's so the principle here, because the idea is like Prabhupada goes the Bhagavatam is simultaneously explained in 4 verses and in 4 billion verses all the same, inasmuch as the Lord is smaller than the atom and bigger than the unlimited sky. The 3rd verse of the 1st chapter of Bhagavatam, Nigama kalpatarura galitam palam sukhamukha adamrita dravya samyatam pibata Bhagavatam rasamalayam muhurahura sikabhuvi bhavuka. Relish Srimad-Bhagavatam is the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. And this Bhagavatam emanated from the lips of Srila Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore, its nectarian taste has become even sweeter, although it was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. So it becomes sweeter. And so Shukadeva Goswami heard it from Vyasadeva. So how could it be sweeter than coming from Vyasadeva? Because that's it's Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam, spiritual life. It's ever increasing. So Shukadeva Goswami made it sweeter, down the line, sweeter and sweeter. And then it's even sweeter hearing it from Srila Prabhupada. It's even sweeter hearing it from Srila Prabhupada, right? So I know there's many here have shared with me recently. You shared with me many in this assembly that you've admitted you're becoming addicted to Bhagavatam. You've admitted to me. And at first, maybe it felt like, no, it's like I need to discipline myself, like that. But then just like as we become purified, the taste becomes sweeter and sweeter. The taste becomes sweeter and sweeter. And so, yes. Also, Narada Muni speaks to Vyasadeva. Idam hi pumpasa tapasa shutasya sutasya suktasya chapuri datyo avitra turta kavibir nirupita yarutamashloka gunanu varnana. So similar to this verse, he's speaking about different branches of knowledge, different categories. He speaks about physics and social work and chemistry and politics and social work, economics, psychology. And he goes like, so in spiritual life, we don't need to reject those things. Dovetail, whatever our occupation, whatever our service, whatever our temporary dharmas. Temporary dharma means like, okay, maybe I'm the spouse of this one, I'm the father of this one, I'm the son or daughter of this one. So those are temporary dharmas. I'm a scientist, I'm a computer engineer, I'm an artist. We don't need to give those up. Dovetail, utilize. Utilize everything in the service of the ashraya, the ultimate shelter, in the service of Sri Krishna, personality of Godhead. Atabumbir Jujashveshtas, Varnashrama Vibhagashas, Venusti Tasya Dharmasya Samsadir Haritoshanam. So for fulfilling all and any of our responsibilities of our life, the perfection, the most perfect, complete way we can fulfill any of our responsibilities is to fulfill them in a way that pleases Sri Krishna, the personality of God. So I'm going to read this verse again. It's text 44 of chapter 9, canto 2, Srimad-Bhagavatam. Tasmaidam Bhagavatam Puranam Dasalakshanam Proktam Bhagavata Praha Prita Putraya Bhutakrit. Thereupon the supplementary Vedic literature, Srimad-Bhagavatam, which was described by the personality of Godhead and which contains 10 characteristics, was told with satisfaction by the father Brahma to his son Narada. Thank you for your association and attentiveness. It is described in the second verse of Bhagavatam, Sajjarita Bharutite Chakrit Vishushishabis Takshana, that by attentive and submissive hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is revealed in our heart. So thank you for your attentive and submissive hearing to Srimad Bhagavatam. I welcome any comments or questions. Ladini.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I already asked this question,
Yeah.
but like how do we remember Krishna? And also because you spoke about it's no wasting time on each other.
Yeah.
It's just kind of feels impossible to me to remember 24 hours a day. Or okay, I'm fine to sleep and not remember.
Yeah,
Not
yeah. Yeah.
But then I'm awake.
Awake in quotes, you're saying.
Relatively, I'm not sleeping on the bed, closed eyes and have dreams, but
Yeah.
Walking around, awake in quotes. So how do I remember this? And not waste time of others. It's the practical application.
Thanks for your question. That's a very Bhagavatam question. And the answer is everything. Everything. That's really the answer. And it's a very Bhagavatam question. It's a sort of question we hear in Bhagavatam. It means everything Prabhupada gave us, we do it. So, let's say compared to you 7 years ago, you're remembering Krishna more than you were, and you're helping others remember Krishna more than you were. You weren't so active in helping others remember Krishna 7 years ago. Excuse me. So, all right. So, so just do more of it. 3 fingers pointing back at myself. So everything Prabhupada gave us, just like I have some proclivity to try to learn verses. I've not learned bhajans so much, those are verses. So then recently somehow I got, and something came to me, the bhajan, Bhaja Hure Mana Sridananandana Abhayachare Nara Dindare Dulabha Manava Janma Satsange Taroe Bhava Sindure. So it's a beautiful bhajan. So it's helping me to remember Krishna. I was falling asleep and I was remembering that bhajan. So Prabhupada gave us we all like to eat. Okay, so he gave us a process. Offer the prasad. Yeah. Okay. Studying his books. There's a book full of bhajans, kirtan, Hare Krishna Mahamantra, kirtan, programs like this, attending, participating. So basically, it can seem like, that's a 80,000 mile high mountain to climb, 24 hours a day or all the times. Of course, the pure devotee, when they're sleeping, they're absorbing that remembrance. But, so Prabhupada gave us a program for whatever, and we can just touch any part of the program, any part of let me offer a flower on the altar to Prabhupada, Radharani. Let me offer a flower. Yes. And let me offer obeisances. And we're remembering. So Prabhupada gave us a program to move towards 24 hours per day. And so that's why when I say everything, because I can say do more kirtan, study Chaitanya Charitamrita more, or chant at least 20 rounds a day instead of increase rounds. Get up earlier and learn a shloka. But it's like, in what sense, it doesn't matter, because Prabhupada gave us such an extra complete program. We can just choose any part and increase it, and then we're remembering Krishna more. And then from our very presence, others will remember Krishna more. I'll hear from Malini. Malin.
Thank you. I appreciate Prabhupada. Like you said in your class, Prabhupada, he gave us the nectar. It's even more nectarian than Brahma speaking to Narada. So Prabhupada is so expert in giving us Krishna consciousness in a way that touch our hearts and move us without even us knowing it.
Yeah.
That's the most intelligent educator, is an educator that can give education without needing to give education.
Yes.
And so Srila Prabhupada, the way he gives us Bhakti Yoga and Krishna consciousness, it seems like rule regulation, I'm not this body, and so much of that. And at the same time, and perceptively experiencing more and more Krishna consciousness. And it's like in a seminar, people kind of feel like, oh, there is no teaching, and there is no teaching so much. But people, through their experience, they have so much realization. So it seems like that's one part of what I wanted to share about how Srila Prabhupada expertise in helping us remembering Krishna 24 hours a day. And a personal experience to respond to Ladini, like I see that for many years, I had an expectation of what it should look like to remember Krishna 24 hours a day. And I can see how that expectation got in the way of me remembering Krishna more.
Mm.
And from the moment I started acknowledging the many ways that I do remember Krishna, and give credit to Prabhupada, not because, oh, I'm a great devotee or I'm a pure devotee or whatever, like not becoming puffed up like Brahma is praying for that. That's the only thing he asked from Krishna, please protect me from becoming puffed up. And at the same time acknowledging, wow, Prabhupada's program does work.
Mm.
I do remember Krishna. Oh, look at that in that conversation. Maybe externally it doesn't look like maybe a modern conversation even. And acknowledging like, I'm thinking of Krishna, I'm thinking of the cosmic manifestation, I'm thinking of Anartha Nivritti, I'm thinking about, Srila Prabhupada's teaching. And the moment, at least in my experience, the moment I started acknowledging that, then that's when I was and letting go of the emotional attachment to expectation that it should look a certain way. Then I started to reappreciate Srila Prabhupada's expertise in teaching us to remember Krishna all the time, because it is there in some ways. It's not like I'm remembering Krishna as a cowherd boy in Vrindavan tending to the cows. That will come. Srila Prabhupada says that will come automatically. Our heart is going to be absorbed there. And right now, maybe it's not where we are at, but it doesn't mean that we don't remember Krishna either. Yeah.
Thanks for that inspiring sharing, Malini, about Srila Prabhupada's distinctive, empowered genius and expertise to move us to remember Krishna more and more, even in ways we're not perceptive about. With Prabhupada's doing that. Thank you, Melanie, and your personal experience of that. Thanks for sharing. Ladini, then Brielle.
Yes, thank you, Dhira Govinda, Melanie, for your responses. I'm inspired, and I feel like I know I have like something to like move with it. And I was very inspired, Dhira Govinda Prabhu, with your like learning by chance.
Yeah.
And my mind immediately went to like, what if I don't have time for it? And even just yesterday, Anandini and I are buddies for memorizing Bhagavad Gita verses through the course. And so today is the course, and I didn't memorize my verses yet. So yesterday during cooking lunch, I was cooking lunch, and I recorded verse 1025 on repeat, and I was listening it again and again as I was cooking. And Bhakta, as I was also cooking, and at the end of the cooking, we both remembered the verse. So like even just my own experience yesterday, I kind of needed to beat. You're like, what if I don't have time for it?
Yes, you needed to expose the weakness of that excuse.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. And I'm very glad to hear about that shloka buddy relationship with you and Anandini. Bhaktin Brielle.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm participating in class from my backyard. Thank you for your class. I only got into the middle of it. But when I chimed in, you were sharing something like, I don't remember the exact words, but it was something around, like if we're not cultivating that relationship with Krishna, then life is empty, and that's like the most meaningful. That's what's going to give meaning and real fulfillment to our lives. And I've been hearing you say that for years, and it's finally like registering in a deeper way now, I think, because, and my sharing is partially a response to Ladini's question. I've been practicing contemplative prayer recently, like how Christians are really good at, mystic Christians at contemplative prayer. And it's been really enhancing my like the other practices, like chanting 16 rounds every day. And as I've been doing that, as I've gone deeper into prayer, just keep showing up, I realized that so often I've been doing chanting, like I realized that we can do chanting, we can do these practices that Srila Prabhupada gave us in a way that is still in the spirit of like resisting, wanting to actually experience communion with God. And it's really interesting for me to see how, like, as I've gone deeper into this prayer, I've come face to face with this resistance to like surrender myself, this resistance to like show up. But I'm still showing up. And then it's because I'm showing up that I'm able to see that. And so now when I sit down to chant, I realize that I have to make like I get to make a conscious choice if I actually want to chant in a spirit of communion with God, or if I just want to chant to get my rounds done. And I never realized that like hundreds of times I've been making the choice to not have that communion and just get my rounds done and just do the things. So I'm just finding from contemplative prayer that something is opening up for me where I'm actually remembering Krishna more, because I am making the decision like, yes, I want to commune with you. And then I'm thinking of Krishna more, and Radha Krishna is actually becoming the center because I'm consciously making that decision. So I just wanted to share that, because it's just amazing for me that these practices, we could do them in a spirit of avoidance, ironically, if we're not conscious about it. So that's it. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhaktin Brielle. I'm personally moved and enriched by your sharing. And that's, well, okay, the Sanskrit term is vandhanam. Vandhanam, it's a limb of bhakti, which means contemplative prayer. So you're doing contemplative prayer, maybe in the form of a Christian tradition, and that in itself is bhakti, and it's enhancing your presence and your attentiveness with your chanting, rather than it's moving you away from mechanical chanting towards the actual spirit of Radha Krishna in the center. Contemplative prayer, you're using that bandhanam process, and it's effective, moving you from I have to chant my rounds to I'm blessed to chant these names of Radha and Krishna. Thank you, Brielle.
Thank you.
Anandini.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I was thinking of when Ladini shared her question, and you responded, and also Malini, about the spiritual practice. What came to me is that, so Krishna and Prabhupada, and they give us, and other acharyas, they give us practice to remember Krishna.
Yeah.
And Krishna, he also gave us the material context to remember him.
Yes.
So I often remember Krishna when I'm in pain, when I'm suffering, and when I'm really awake to my experience, there is a lot of suffering.
Thanks for that.
That came to my mind. And also, yes, Yogeshwar, he's staying with us a few days. And yesterday he gave a presentation about chanting. He shared some of his research, and we did an interesting process. Like he played the Maha Mantra when Srila Prabhupada's chants, and in between there's a recording of Srila Prabhupada saying, the process is you chant and you listen. So you chant the names of God, and all you do is you listen to the words you say. And this really impacted me a lot, because when we hear that Krishna is present in his holy name, he's present in japa, and that japa reveals everything about material and spiritual. So it's so simple. Just say Krishna and hear it. That's all. And that's all we need to do. And everything else will be revealed to us. So that came to me when I was listening to the questions and sharings.
Thanks for that. I'm glad to hear about the association with Yogeshwar Prabhu and yourself and your family members, and the katha around chanting japa. And that's a great point. Yeah, so because there's the practices of sadhana bhakti or learning bhajans or kirtan, but just okay, Krishna says that he is death, Mrityu sarva harashchaham. So in the misery, in the disease, that's meant, the whole suffering of material energy, that's meant to help us remember Krishna too.
And it's not what I had expected, that this is where we find God, but it's true.
But it's true. And Trama Kinshana Gochara, Queen Kunti says, for those who are relatively not in so much pain, it's hard to feelingly remember Krishna. But for some in the deep pain, that's when we call out Krishna, Krishna.
I will rather remember Krishna less.
What's that?
I will rather remember Krishna less.
Well, that's the thing. So Queen Kunti says, so let there be more pain, then I'll remember Krishna more. So we might be thinking, I'm not on that level, thank you. Thank you, Anandini. Payal and Damayanti. Hare Krishna.
really appreciating your class and hearing, well, so much I feel like there is for me to learn. And I feel like I'm like starting to like get closer and closer to like wanting to hear more of the Bhagavatam. And I think if you would have asked me a year ago, no, maybe even a month ago. So I'm feeling grateful to have this association and just this opportunity. And something that, I think it's related to what a lot of people are sharing today is something that you shared that I think I'm still processing, that I think you just brought up too, is, and I don't know if you said it was, I heard you say that, I don't know if I heard it right, or which way, from the Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita, that maybe it was the Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna's energy is the source of material and spiritual, like everything is Krishna.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm still, like, I struggle with that.
Okay.
Hearing Anandini share, like, okay, in her pain, she experiences Krishna. He's sharing that Krishna is even in death as well.
Yeah.
So there's that part of me that experiences pain when I hear that. Like, there's Krishna's in pain too, so I feel sadness with that. And at the same time, I think there's a part of me that's aiming to understand that everything at the end of the day is perfect and complete.
Yes. Yeah.
And my intention is to understand more, but for some reason it brings up pain for me.
It's painful. Yeah.
That Krishna can bring pain as well.
Yeah. Like, the part of you knows that there's truth there, and for a part of you, it's like it's painful for your heart. Yeah, because Krishna is in Vrindavan playing the flute and dancing with the gopis, and let's remember Krishna, but Krishna in diseased condition, Krishna in all the unfairness and brutality of the world. It's like, wow, something's painful for you there. And you're experiencing your pain in some philosophical context. Om Purnam Madaham Purnamidam Purnam Mudachyate. Everything's a perfect, complete arrangement for my Krishna consciousness. Still, the pain is real for you.
It feels like a struggle. It's like maybe I don't want to surrender, or part of me.
Yeah.
And the funny part is I do want to surrender.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, what Rails shared is like part of resistance is like seeing some of that resistance.
Yeah.
Just appreciating the opportunity to get to hear, because I feel like I'm starting to understand a bit more around. It's like just what you shared is Prabhupada saying good morning, like how the energy behind, I imagine how he said good morning meant the person where he's at. So it didn't matter the words, it's the energy. And so coming back to like what I'm sharing is my struggle, but part of what I'm aiming to understand is like, okay, maybe the energy behind suffering is still love. Maybe the energy behind pain is still, it is love, because it's Krishna.
That even the material world with its birth, death, old age, disease, and pain from cheating, and so many things. This is also Krishna's mercy. This is also Krishna's mercy, not that he's like sadistic, but like really wanting us to be happy and to turn to him. Okay, Krishna, let me do it your way. Let me engage in bhakti. And just like as an analogy, at least ideally, the prison house, suffering, but ideally it's actually the mercy of the government. Because then, first of all, the law-abiding citizens are protected from criminals. It's not a very flattering analogy because we're the criminals here. But then the the suffering in the prison house itself, like, yeah, you need to stay in your cell and like that. It's not just like the torture. The idea is, okay, yeah, let me become a law-abiding citizen. I'll be happier too. And yeah, I needed this. I needed this being in this cell and just being able to eat the slop they give us. I needed this to become a law-abiding citizen, and that's my real happiness, and I can contribute to others. So that's like an analogy that's there too.
It's trusting that the prison, the cell that we're in is truly meant to be, to bring us closer. Or to be the law-abiding citizen in a way, like to be a devotee of Krishna.
I like how you brought in that. It's about trusting that. Trusting that, yeah, I've got the perfect prison cell for me, rather than, no, this is completely not. In the forward, or the forward of the second edition of Relationships That Work, there's Peter Burwash, and he talks about his meeting with Prabhupada in Mayapur. He says he met a spiritual teacher, that's Prabhupada, who told him the two most important things he ever heard. He had just been cheated by a friend out of a lot of money in business. So he was experiencing a lot of pain, anger, resentment. And Prabhupada said, spiritual life begins when you understand the law of karma. 2, don't be angry at the instrument of your karma. So the first one, spiritual life begins when you understand the law of karma. I see it, karma is completely synonymous with 100% personal responsibility. It means trust. I'm the creator of this. I'm the creator, and this is the perfect arrangement. And as long as we're resisting that, then we're going to be in grungy stuff, and we won't be fully committed, fully devoted to respond to this context with self-realization and Krishna consciousness. Thank you, Bhakti and Paya. Thanks for sharing and expressing. Amyanti.
I wanted to add to the conversation.
Yeah.
How about like the question of like how to stay awake, not just how to remember Krishna, but the angle of how to stay awake.
Yeah.
Sattvic conscious living. And well, I've been receiving some coaching from Lindy Shakti, and I'd like to let everyone know that she's a phenomenal coach.
Good. We have it recorded.
Yes, let it be known on YouTube. Everything that she did add was exactly what I needed to hear, and very transformative. So I've been contemplating, I've been realizing that, like, I want to live a conscious life day to day, like just regular day to day life.
Yeah.
And if I don't, I'm depressed.
Yeah.
And it's empty and hollow, and it's not genuine. I want to stay inspired day to day.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way. And I've been actually feeling a lot of depressed feelings. I think it's good, like it's coming to the surface. It's things that I wasn't acknowledging, so I'm like, it's coming, but it's not like, oh, I'm handling it on day to day perfectly. So yeah, I'm just kind of a human over here. But anyway, the thing that I got out of the coaching session yesterday with Ladini, and that I've contemplated since then, is like the when you take your pulse, like you know what's going on deeper underneath, like you know what's happening underneath, what's coursing underneath inside, and there's further pulse. And now, like in Chinese medicine, they take a pulse of like 6 different places or more to check all what's going on inside. So this idea of like taking the pulse, like checking in with yourself, and like knowing which of which option that Prabhupada's offering, or our great teachers, or what option is the one that's just right for me, that keeps me inspired. So I'm just saying, like, that added element of like knowing yourself and staying just tuned in, and you're like, like that, I should do that. I think I should do that. Either there's just like either another way to do it or just a different like devotional
Yes.
service, you know. I just feel like that's really crucial. Like I personally, like I have got to live like that. I have to stay tuned in. And I mean, I've been conditioned, you know, I've been conditioned to not stay tuned in and to ignore things and do things I should do and do them in a mood that's not conscious and inspiring. And then I'm depressed after, and then I'm escaping, and you know, like, so just wanted to add that to the conversation. That's where I'm at in my self-realization. It's a brand new thought to like stay day to day, like life. I need to stay, like, you know, check the pulse of what's coursing through me, and
What's happening underneath?
How am I going to meet that lovingly and go forward? You know, like it's very nuanced how to like get forward and like. So that's one to add that.
Thank you, Damayanti. Glad to hear about your coaching with Ladini. And I appreciate the pulse analogy. I see there's a chat. Okay. Anandini. She's sorry to leave in the middle. She needs to attend to the girls that need her help. Malini.
I just wanted to go back to Payal's question.
Yeah.
And one thing that Payal said is Krishna wants us to suffer. And my understanding is that Krishna doesn't want us to suffer, but we want to suffer. In the Bhagavad Gita, somewhere I said, enjoying suffering.
Enjoying suffering, right?
And that Krishna's only desire for us is to come back to our constitutional position, which is full of bliss, our happiness. And then that's his only desire. And then within that, Krishna may create situation for his devotees to sincerely, you know, like to respond to their desire for that too.
Yeah.
And that will bring them closer to Krishna, like Queen Kunti. You know, somewhere Queen Kunti does desire calamities because she knows when calamity comes, she gets to see Krishna face to face. Yes.
Thanks for that, Malini. I like the way you expressed that. Thanks for that embellishment. Yes, yeah. No, Krishna wants us to be blissful, not suffering. And so, and the spiritual and material energies are all designed for that. Thanks for that. Adina.
I also would like to go back to Payal's question, and I'm struggling. And I have a lot of realization about like death, like how death is loving. Not that I don't want more of my relatives dying, but Leonka was born 2 years ago, and then my grandmother died a year ago. So there was like more death experience than before in my life. And there are like many things that I really like appreciate about it, like urgency, like sense of urgency with the relationships I still have, and so much more gratitude for the people who are in my life, and also like the death, like increasing love, like for the person as the soul. Like with my grandmother, I had like so much tensions and grungy, and then when she died, all I feel for her is love and like for the soul. So I have a lot of appreciation for that, and even like for the experiences that I had relatively recently, is something like soothing, and it helps me to have faith that like all that is happening in this world is like on the ground of all loving intentions of Krishna. So I wanted to share this experience with you. It always helps me when we have like a seminar, and then there is like, okay, look at your victim story from a responsible perspective, and then people share, and there is so much growth, so much realization, so much opening of heart, so much like qualities that the person like is able to develop through like different painful experiences. So I love that process in the self-help seminar or in coaching to like really see that anyone who is like willing to like tap into the responsible perspective, it's like, wow, this is like all like for so much so much more good. Yeah, and last thing I want to add to it is it also like helps me, like the death really helps me to like be tuned to what's important. Like for example, I took the Sapatok seminar and then I knew I want to learn how to teach this.
Yeah.
And I knew there is no time to wait. Like Dhira Govinda and Malini were like 55 at that time. And maybe they will teach it another 20 years, but maybe not. So like
Yes.
it's just like really like gives me this like urgency, like okay, to like spend time with them, learn from them. Or like, and I feel really complete. I mean, there is always more complete, but I do feel complete and like satisfied with that. Yes, like this urgency, that's because of that, like really helps me to get from you what I wanted to get. And also like now when Malini is like after the chemotherapy and radiation, and she wrote like, can you come to help me? Again, like this sense of urgency, like this doesn't have to, like this situation like doesn't have to be like repeated. Like yeah, I had like some seminar schedule that I will teach, things like this, and it's just like no, like it's best like really helps me to be connected with like life purpose, what's important. And so I'm grateful for that, and I don't want people around me to guide Krishna like that.
And they will.
And well, I could die first.
You could die first.
But then like I would not want that experience for my parents. I don't know if they would be able to process it in some sort of healthy way.
Right.
So hopefully they will, not me.
Well, let's say I personally appreciate that somehow you're moved to urgency and you got yourself trained to conduct the Sappatov seminars. I genuinely appreciate that. Gajendra.
Hare Krishna, good morning. Regarding suffering, I think, generally is applied to, people or living entities in this world. It's a little impersonal in the sense, I think, that it's just a somewhat automatic state of being, from being kind of like a fish out of water.
Yeah.
Like if a fish is in the water, swimming freely, being in its natural condition, then it's happy. But if it finds itself flopping around, gasping for breath on land, it's a state of suffering.
Yes.
And that's just a natural thing. It's not like someone at that point is consciously going, hey, you got out of the water, I want you to suffer. Right. It's just a natural state of things. So, we are a part of Krishna. And so in one sense, we want to be our natural selves if we're not in, illusion or in a diseased condition. So in a kind of unconscious, perhaps, way, we are wanting to suffer when we're suffering to help us, realign, to re-enter our natural state of bhakti, loving devotional service. So I definitely don't see it like, Krishna is doing this to me or some other being is doing this. There may be those aspects, and also maybe if one is super intimate with Krishna, it could be more personal. But in general, I see it, of course, personal in the sense of bhakti, but impersonal as far as the mechanism. It's just by default, I'm suffering because I'm not properly situated.
I know I will borrow that. I like that expansion of the fish in water, fish out of water analogy. That's just great. That really helps me to understand this. It's not like, oh, now you came out of the water, now you'll be punished. No, now there's going to be suffering because it's not your environment. Yeah. Thank you, Gajendra Prabhu.
Krishna, I have a question. Great. So there's a concept spiritual bypass.
Yeah.
And there's just a couple of days ago, we were in master class.
Yes.
6 days, 6-week series, class, and one of the participants was sharing her process about. And basically, what was the theme of that was like avoiding genuine spiritual process.
Yeah.
With spirituality,
Right.
Like using spirituality to avoid genuine spiritual process. There's a lot we could go into that, but so those two couple of spiritual bypass, that kind of those concepts, and then there's so that's one side consideration, and then we want to be like dependent on Krishna's. We want to be dependent on Krishna.
Yeah.
Dependent on this, Prabhupada, the mercy, we want to be just fully dependent on that. Because we're going to be dependent on something.
Yes.
It's like we have this dependency nature, going to be addicted, so we need to just transfer that, to Krishna. And so it's like, okay, so using Krishna consciousness as a crutch, and then like healthy dependency, that kind of interplay there. And so I'm just wondering, maybe myself, personal feedback, or just in the general, like, okay, so for myself, like I experienced that I'm anxious, fearful, frozen and paranoid, whatever, and then, okay, I need to chant.
Right.
Chant 4 rounds, 8 rounds,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
really
Take shelter there.
take
Yeah.
shelter. So, okay, so was that avoiding those emotions of fear and anxiety and just, so I'm just wondering that kind of relationship between, avoiding genuine spirituality and then avoiding, our genuine process versus being like dependent on healthy dependency.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the spiritual bypass is where, in the name of a spiritual practice or spiritual life or whatever, or some philosophical bypass, in the name of that, we avoid working like everything depends on us. We avoid giving our 100% effort internally in our honest introspection and externally, right? And now, of course, even if we're doing spiritual bypass, but there's some chanting the names of God, that's still purifying. But that's the way I see it, that like, okay, so like Prabhupada, Jiva Goswami, he references all these acharyas. So they're all completely dependent on Krishna, Lord Chaitanya and Radha Krishna. And they're giving with full enthusiasm. They're giving to spread the movement. Like, well, it's up to Krishna, so I'll just go to sleep now. Okay, so that's it. So okay, am I doing some spiritual practice, and there's part of my energy that's to avoid responsibly looking at how I got myself into the mess I got myself into. It doesn't mean we don't want to use a gross analogy, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But we don't want to give up the chanting, but we want to look, is there any motivation here to avoid my honest introspection, to avoid looking practically, how did I get myself into this situation? Practically, what is the source of this resentment, grungy, that I'm just holding on to? And I'll chant extra rounds to avoid looking at that. It doesn't mean we shouldn't chant extra rounds, but is there something where I really want to run away from doing my part of the work? You pray like everything depends on Krishna, and work like everything depends on us. Some thoughts there. Thank you, Prabhupada.
Maybe also they don't need to be separated, the two processes, because right now it seems that there is either this or that.
Yeah.
And it seems that the more we integrate Krishna consciousness the more there is only one process.
Mhm.
That there is no separation, because really, like the process of introspection and the process of self-realization, if it's devoid of the one, like it's a zero.
Yeah.
And so more and more, as we progress, integrating Krishna consciousness, then they go together, because anartha nivritti is part of the process anyway.
Thanks for that, Melanie. Yeah, it's sometimes helpful to think of the processes separately. My work, like everything, depends on when I pray, the anartha nivritti, the woodering. At the same time, it's the processes are one and non-different. That's truth too. Thanks for that perspective. Hare Krishna. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you all. Thank you all for your association. Jai Bhagavatam.